At Designer Shoe Warehouse, we believe that shoes are an important part of, well, everything.
From first steps to first dates, from all-nighters to all-time personal bests.
From building pillow forts to building a life.
For all the big and small moments that make up your whole world, DSW is there. And we've got just the shoes. Find a shoe for every you from brands you love at brag-worthy prices at your DSW store or DSW.com.
The WNBA playoffs are in full swing, and Tommy Elter's The Young Man in the Three brings you closer to the game. Get complete WNBA playoff coverage as Tommy sits down with the game's biggest stars and delivers unmatched analysis. The Young Man in the Three's WNBA playoff coverage is presented by Quest Nutrition. From irresistibly crunchy protein chips to rich chocolatey protein bars, these treats make giving in feel so good. Quest, big on protein, low on sugar, huge on flavor. Shop Quest on Amazon at amazon.com/Quest Nutrition and enjoy all the WNBA action on The Young Man in the Three wherever you get your podcasts.
The amazing Kate Casey.
Welcome back for another episode of Reality Life with Kate Casey. I hope that you're having a great week. I hope that you listened to my episode yesterday with Brian Moylan. I'm still laughing about it. We talked about this stupid rumor on Real Housewives of Orange County. One of the cast members accused another of roughly 15 years ago, possibly hooking up with a member of the boy band 98 Degrees. And when they said it was like a horrible thing. And Brian and I were like, that sounds kind of amazing. And then it began a conversation about if we had been given the opportunity to hang out or hook up with someone from a boy band, who would that person be? And we came up with our choices, and you've got to listen to the episode to hear who we said. And I kept thinking of you guys and how you were probably already running through the person in your head. So I would love to know who that person may be. And it may be the same people that we chose. We had such a good time recording that, so I hope that you listen to that. And then, of course, the What to Watch list, which is the episode on Monday. I told you about a ton of reality shows that are on this week, a ton of premieres, as they always do, and this week, each year in September. One of them that you're going to definitely want to look at is World's Toughest Test on Fox. And that is littered with reality stars. I'm most interested to see how Cody Brown from Sister Wives can cope. Number one, I think Robin was elated that he was out of town and probably smoked a cigarette in her bed. I mean, she's probably thrilled he was gone. But I'm interested to see how he can acclimate himself to an environment where he is not the big dog, because he insists in being spaces where people have to listen to him. Like, he didn't like it when his kids got older, because then they would have opinions and then they would argue with him. Well, he's going to argue with everybody on this show, namely the members of the military, the former members of the military, who are going to be like, you're a loser, so we got to watch that one. Rob Sesternino, who's an expert on Survivor, will be on the show soon to talk about the premiere of Survivor. I'm also going to be interviewing Rabia from the case against Adnan Syed, which is coming up as well. It's a great doc series on HBO based on the podcast series Serial. So make sure you listen to that. I've got a great Saturday series episode. I hope that you listened to last week's Saturday series episode 2 with Sandy Klein. So many of you have reached out to me to tell me how you felt as you listened to that interview. And I just want you to know how much I appreciate all of those. It is one of those mind-bending stories. And I'm so grateful for the family for sharing it. So anyway, there is a lot to look forward to this week in the podcast, but also on the What to Watch list. And in this episode, I'm going to talk about 2 music projects. One is a documentary and the other a reality show. The first I want to talk about is the documentary Lilith Fair, Building a Mystery on Hulu. Now, when I think about music, first of all, I love music documentaries because they're so soothing. I find sometimes people love to watch cooking shows. I love to watch or listen to a music doc. And I'm not necessarily a huge music person that goes to concerts, etc., but I do really love getting a window into someone's mad genius, whatever that may be, and especially musicians. In this case, you're going to hear about a ton of different female musicians. And I almost feel like you get a better appreciation for their individuality when you see all of them together in this project. And it really does remind me how collaborative women are. Songs, they really do kind of pepper the timeline of your life. A few notes of a song can send you right back into a memory, a place, or even a person. So for me, whenever I hear Barbra Streisand and Barry Manilow, I immediately think of my mom. For my sister, whenever I hear that song, Come On Eileen by Dexy's Midnight Runners, I always think of her. I think of my stepfather when I hear that song by Jim Croce, Bad, Bad Leroy Brown. Because one time we got in a big fight, I think I was about 7, and he said, you know what, you're meaner than a junkyard dog. And I looked at him, and I remember I went, isn't that a song? When I think of college, I think of American Girl by Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Dixie Chicks reminds me of my friend Ashley and my years in Virginia Beach. Ariana Grande and The Weeknd's song Love Me Harder always reminds me of my oldest daughter. Bruno Mars always reminds me of my husband and my son. My little girls, One Direction's That's What Makes You Beautiful, and probably because I've listened to it approximately 79,000 times. Music just stitches itself to our memories, to our identities, to the people that we love most. It's that power, that undeniable way that music shapes us and defines us, that makes the erasure of women in its history so infuriating. Because women have always been there, creating, influencing, leading, which is why the arrival of something like Lilith Fair wasn't just a festival, it was a reclamation, a rewriting of the story. So when we talk about the history of music, the rise of rock and roll, the festival stages that define generations, Woodstock, Lollapalooza, Coachella, the legends, the icons, the innovators. But when you look closer at those stories and who they center on, you're going to notice a pattern. Men. The bands are male. The producers are male. The critics writing the reviews are male. Women, when they appear at all, are treated as exceptions. They're described as rare talents, breakthrough artists, or the lone female voice of an era. They are never presented as the norm, and in that absence, something dangerous happens. The idea takes root that women were never there, that they never contributed, and that they never mattered. This is the myth that the Lilith Fair was born to challenge.
On Boxing Day 2018, 20-year-old Joy Morgan was last seen at her church, Israel United in Christ, or IUIC.
I just went on my Snapchat and I just see her face plastered everywhere.
This is The Missing Sister, the true story of a woman betrayed by those she trusted most.
IUIC is my family and like the best family that I've ever had.
But IUIC isn't like most churches.
This is a devilish cult.
You know when you get that feeling where you just, I don't want to be here. I want to get out. It's like that feeling of, like, I want to go home now.
I'm Charlie Brinkhurst-Cuff, and after years of investigating Joy's case, I need to know, what really happened to Joy? Binge all episodes of The Missing Sister exclusively and ad-free right now on Wondery Plus. Start your free trial of Wondery Plus on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or in the Wondery app.
Hi, I'm Denise Chan, host of Scam Factory. You might remember hearing about our investigative series that exposed what's really happening behind those suspicious texts you get. Inside heavily guarded compounds across Asia, thousands are trapped and forced to scam others or risk torture. One of our most powerful stories was Jella's, a young woman who thought she'd found her dream job, only to end up imprisoned in a scam compound. Her escape story caught the attention of Criminal's Phoebe Judge, and I'm honored to share more details of Jella's journey with their audience. But Jella's story is just one piece of this investigation. In Scam Factory, we reveal how a billion-dollar criminal empire turns job seekers into prisoners, and how the only way out is to scam your way out. Ready to uncover the full story? Binge all episodes of Scam Factory now. Listen to Scam Factory on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts.
In the mid-1990s, Sarah McLachlan, a Canadian singer-songwriter with the most crystal voice, had reached a breaking point with the way that the industry treated women. Radio programmers had what they openly called an unwritten rule. You didn't want to play two women back to back on the air. Yes, you've just heard that right. You didn't play two women back to back on the air because the assumption was insulting in its simplicity, that women were interchangeable and that audiences didn't want to hear female voices stacked together, that the male voice was default and everything else was a detour. Well, Sarah didn't buy it. So she created something that the industry never imagined would work, a music festival headlined entirely by women. And they called it Lilith Fair. The festival's name carried its own quiet rebellion. Sarah chose Lilith Fair as a nod to the ancient figure of Lilith, who in folklore was said to be Adam's first wife, cast out of Eden because she refused to be subservient. Over centuries, Lilith became a symbol of female independence, defiance, and power, though often painted as a dangerous or wicked person because she resisted male control. By naming the festival after her, Sarah reframed that narrative. Lilith wasn't a cautionary tale here. She was an emblem of strength, a reminder that women who refused to be silenced or diminished had always existed. Now, at first, the idea was dismissed. It was even mocked. A whole festival of women. Who's going to buy tickets to see that? But in the first year, 1997, Lilith Fair shocked the industry. It became one of the top grossing tours of the decade, pulling in over $16 million. Audiences flocked to see it, not just because it was something new, but because it was something that they had been waiting for, a space where women weren't squeezed into the margins, but instead they stood at the center. And it wasn't one sound or one type of woman. The lineup itself was a rebuke to the idea that women in music were all the same. Sheryl Crow brought rock swagger. Tracy Chapman's voice carried the weight of folk activism. Jewel sang with a raw, poetic edge. Lauryn Hill brought hip-hop brilliance. The Indigo Girls embodied folk rock community. Missy Elliott pushed boundaries of genre and gender all at once. And seeing those women on the same stage told a story that the industry had refused to acknowledge. Women are power players also in the music industry. But to understand why Lilith Fair mattered, you have to understand what came before. So for decades, women in music were systematically disregarded. In the 1960s, girl groups like the Ronettes or the Supremes were icons, yes, but they had little to no control over their sound or careers. They were tightly managed, their creativity squeezed into molds designed by men. Janis Joplin, one of the most powerful rock vocalists in history, was rarely described as genius. Instead, the narrative focused on her chaotic energy, her wild lifestyle, and her self-destruction. Male excess was seen as artistry. Female excess was seen as pathology. So by the 1970s and 80s, things had shifted, but only slightly. Stevie Nicks was the ethereal face of Fleetwood Mac, but Mick Fleetwood and Lindsey Buckingham were credited as the real creative forces. Debbie Harry fronted Blondie, but was too often reduced to her platinum hair and sex appeal rather than her pioneering artistry. And even when women were undeniable stars, they were still treated as exceptions, novelties, or muses rather than the architects of sound. And this was all compounded by the media. The way women were framed in magazines, on MTV, and tabloids was as much a part of their careers as the music itself. Madonna in the 1980s and 90s was hypersexualized, but she's also punished for daring to control her own sexuality. Courtney Love was relentlessly portrayed as a train wreck, her music totally dismissed as noise. Her very existence framed in opposition to her husband, Kurt Cobain. Even women in pop were flattened into packages of youth and desire. When Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera emerged at the end of the 90s, the conversations about them centered far more on their bodies than on their voices. So this is the cultural landscape into which Lilith Fair arrived. And for 3 summers, it rewrote the narrative. The first Lilith Fair tour kicked off, like I said, in the summer of 1997, and that lineup mixed established stars with rising voices across genres. And while the roster shifted slightly from city to city, the core lineup included Sarah McLachlan, Sheryl Crow, Tracy Chapman, Jewel, Paula Cole, Suzanne Vega, Lisa Loeb, and the Indigo Girls. And then depending on the date in the city, audiences also saw Fiona Apple, Emmylou Harris, Sean Colvin, Mary Chapin Carpenter, Joan Osborne, Meredith Brooks, and Michelle McAdory. So the festival gave space to emerging artists on a second stage, which meant fans could discover new voices alongside the stars. So that mix, the legendary artists, mainstream chart toppers, and unknown talents, was a deliberate part of Sarah's vision, creating a space where women weren't competing for a single spotlight, but instead sharing it. And they have this great footage of them at the end of the night, always collaborating together, coming into a room and all singing one song together. It's pretty amazing to watch.
It's your man, Nick Cannon, and I'm here to bring you my new podcast, Nick Cannon at Night. I've heard y'all been needing some advice in the love department. So who better to help than yours truly? Nah, I'm serious. Every week, I'm bringing out some of my celebrity friends and the best experts in the business to answer your most intimate relationship questions. Having problems with your man? We got you. Catching feelings for your sneaky link? Let's make sure it's the real deal first. Ready to bring toys into the bedroom? Let's talk about it. Consider this a non-judgment zone to ask your questions when it comes to sex and modern dating in relationships, friendships, situationships, and everything in between. It's gonna be sexy, freaky, messy, and you know what? You'll just have to watch the show. So don't be shy. Join the conversation and head over to YouTube to watch Nick Cannon at Night or subscribe on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts. Wanna watch episodes early and ad-free? Join Wondery Plus right now.
In November 1974, IRA bombs ripped through 2 Birmingham pubs, killing 21 innocent people. Hundreds more were injured. It was the worst attack on British soil since the Second World War.
When a crime this appalling and shocking happens, you want the police to act quickly. And boy, did they. The very next day, they had 6 men in custody. Confessions followed, and the men were sent down for life.
Good riddance, you might think, except those men were innocent. Join me, Matt Ford.
And me, Alice Levine.
For the latest series of British Scandal, all about the Birmingham Six.
It's the story of how a terrible tragedy morphed into a travesty of justice, and how one man couldn't rest until he'd exposed the truth.
Follow British Scandal now wherever you listen to podcasts and binge entire series early and ad-free on Wondery Plus.
Now, at the festivals themselves, the atmosphere was unlike anything the music industry had seen. Where other festivals of the time leaned into, like I said, chaos, excess, kind of macho bravado, Lilith Fair felt communal, intentional, and even kind of healing. The crowds were filled with young women, mothers and daughters, groups of friends who had never seen themselves so fully reflected on a stage. But it wasn't always women. Men came too, often drawn into the sense of shared celebration rather than confrontation. Vendors sold artisan goods, poetry was read between sets, and the stages offered a fluid mix of genres that didn't compete so much as complement one another. So instead of a hierarchy of headliners and openers, the festival was like a circle, with each artist lifting up the next. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that right now? It's like, wait, everyone is helping out one another. By the way, can you imagine going to a music festival where you actually were like, I feel pretty safe. Like the people going there and throwing this are going to provide a safe space for me. Lilith Fair wasn't about escape or indulgence. It was just about recognition, belonging, and the radical idea that a music festival could be as much about community as it was about spectacle. Now, as I mentioned, this was at a time where people were just so hungry for so much of that music. But of course, the backlash was immediate. Critics labeled it the estrogen festival. They said it was too soft, too emotional, too feminine. But again, who are the critics? You know what I mean? Some accused it of being man-hating because, of course, if you ever stand up for your own self or for other women, you're, of course, called man-hating, as if the very act of women sharing a stage was inherently antagonistic. But these criticisms revealed more about the critics really than the music. They revealed a deep discomfort with women taking up space, with women building something successful, and without male permission. So what Lilith Fair did was simple. it was really revolutionary too. It showed women as musicians first. And that's why it mattered. For the young women in those audiences, seeing Jewel and Lauryn Hill and Sarah McLachlan on the stage was a message that their voices too could be amplified, that there was room in the world for them and for this kind of music. And for the industry, it was undeniable proof that women could sell tickets, move records, and dominate the cultural conversation. And the legacy, of course, it's complicated because the tour eventually faded and the industry did not suddenly transform into a utopia of equality, as you could imagine. So even now, festival lineups are overwhelmingly male still. Women still face barriers in radio play, award recognition, and representation in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And you know I watch that every year. I love that. So the fight continues, which is most frustrating, but may be a reminder to people of what can happen. The echoes of Lilith Fair remain. You can hear them in Brandi Carlile's activism, in Taylor Swift's commanding arenas, and the countless young artists that are now just forces. These artists exist not because of Lilith Fair, but because it carved out a space for them to be taken seriously, to be profitable, and to be essential. And in the end, it was never just a festival. Like I said, it was a declaration, proof that women gather. When they gather, they don't shrink the stage, they expand it. And it cracked open that myth that women are just footnotes in the story of music. Women are not just the footnotes. They are the story. And that's why you got to watch it. It's called Lilith Fair, Building a Mystery on Hulu, and I highly recommend it. And then last night I watched with one of my kids The Voice, the premiere this week. Now the Coach lineup is back with familiar names. Reba McEntire, Michael Bublé, Niall Horan, and Snoop Dogg. And of course, they all bring their own legacy and flavor to the show. One new twist this season, the Carson callback, it gives eliminated contestants a second shot. So the kind of rule that reminds us creativity isn't always linear, that the path to being heard is often messy, sidelined, or shut down. But there can be do-overs. Now, what I like about The Voice is the idea that someone can have the opportunity to sing before 4 giant stars, plucked from obscurity while their family and friends stand on the side. And then after performing and having them turn their chairs around, they can be coached by those giant stars. It's really kind of amazing when you stop and think about how hard it is for an artist to be found. If you have a child, if you have a neighbor, if you have a friend, and they are an incredible musician, how likely will they be heard? Will they get in front of the right people? Unless you have a video that goes viral or you already know someone with connections, the chances of breaking through are slim. So it's sort of cutting out some of that noise and then handing the mic directly to someone who might otherwise never have been heard. And I think that's also why Lilith Fair was so radical, because it tore down a gate that had kept women out for so long and built an entirely new door. So 2 things for you to watch. Like I said, it's called Lilith Fair, Building a Mystery on Hulu. The Voice airs on NBC, and those episodes air on Monday and Tuesdays. And I am super excited for my upcoming interviews, so make sure you check back and make sure that you are subscribed to this podcast. It's very important. And join the Facebook group, Reality Life with KKC. Please join me on social media. You can follow me on Instagram at KKCCA. TikTok, it's KKC. Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, at KKC. Bonus episodes too. Don't forget about them.
Not great with finances? That's okay. Experian is your big financial friend. Explore credit card offers, some labeled no ding decline, which means if you're not approved, they won't hurt your credit scores. See Experian.com for details. Applying for no ding decline cards won't hurt your credit scores if you aren't initially approved. 2025 Experian.